There is only one position that lost a starter to the transfer portal at Ohio State, but I don't know if we need another Tegra Shabola episode of The Beat. So let's just focus on the Buckeyes who are returning on the interior of the offensive line on this episode of the Austin Birm Show presented by the Waterworks. He is Birm. I am Austin. Tegra Shabola is gone. We probably talked about him more than any other player on Ohio State's roster last year. Ups, downs, inconsistency. He's not back. And part of the reason for that is that there are a lot of contenders to take his job.
I don't know that we've ever spoken that much about one offensive lineman who started every game except for one in the last 3 years of his career.
Yeah.
To the degree we talked about Tegra Shabola, it was a very tumultuous couple of years for him, a little up and down. Certainly,
there were ups.
Certainly, plenty of them. I mean, without Tegra Shabola, again, I don't think Ohio State wins a national championship when Donovan Jackson was forced to move out to the tackle and the rotation of Austin Saraveldt and Luke Montgomery and Tegra Shabola. But that level of Shabola was what people have been counting on for years. That's why he was always first guy off the bus guy. Like he's a massive human being. Tegra was always just a little bit inconsistent. And when you have one position on the offensive line that continues to rear its ugly head and say, this is where the problems are coming from. And that happened all of last year. And it started well before the season. I mean, the conversation was there in the summer and in the fall. So for Ohio State to move forward, you return 4 guys on the offensive line that are starting, and you certainly wouldn't hate to have 5. But the reality is now you have to figure out the alignment, and we're going to go back to what we talked about on Monday's show of The Beat when we're talking about offensive tackle, because a lot of the conversation here about the interior line play, about the starting right guard specifically, is going to come down to which of the current tackles we think is most likely to do it if we're just going into spring football and winter workouts with the pretense that Ian Moore is going to start. And I maybe that's reckless, maybe that's irresponsible, maybe it's completely unfounded. But it seems like that's where things should go, at least from my perspective, and I think yours as well from the conversations we've had about it. But so you have to view this 2 different ways. So there's the one alignment, which is based on last year's setup, and then there's the other, which is if Ian Moore plays, everything changes.
I think that there's another component to this that when we have speculated about what that first 5 is going to look like, and I feel like Philip Daniels is suited to play guard. If you look at the NFL projections for Austin Saraveldt, that's where that level of football thinks that he will ultimately end up. I don't think that has to happen at the college level. You're seeing that with, Caden Proctor, for example, at Alabama, that people go, he's going to be a guard at the next level. Okay, that doesn't mean that you can't be a very good tackle at the college level. And Austin Saraveldt has done that long enough. Like a year-ish more than Philip Daniels. That's spitballing, but my point is either one of them could still be a tackle. They could still beat out Ian Moore. That configuration could work out. Or Philip Daniels, let's say if he kicks inside, Josh Padilla or Gabe Van Sickle could very well still beat him out for a guard job. That's not impossible either, based on the way that Ohio State was certainly building Josh Padilla heading into November before that injury setback. Gabe Van Sickle had some bright spots. He also showed that he was inexperienced in the first half largely, or before he was pulled against Miami in the Cotton Bowl. So when we have that conversation, I don't think it is fair to just say, well, Philip Daniels is definitely going to take that job, or Austin Saraveldt is going to kick inside and he's definitely going to get that job. There's no world where Austin Saraveldt is not going to start for Ohio State. That's simply not going to happen as long as he is healthy and breathing. But, there are other configurations that include this next wave. Part of the reason that Tegra Shabola was viewed as expendable when the transfer portal conversation came up was because, A, you have Luke Montgomery and Carson Hinsman both returning, and B, you have Gabe Van Sickle and Josh Padilla, who there's a lot of confidence with. Again, when you put 8 more months of weight room activity under their belt, they both had a taste of action on the field, some good, some bad last year. There's a high level of confidence in both of those guys that it shouldn't just be automatically assumed that, all right, if Ian Moore takes one of these jobs, it has to go to one of the others.
Yeah, I mean, it is.
That may be more likely.
No, yeah, I mean, it's certainly a little bit, it's kind of a lazy take, but it is likely because that's the guy that started every game last year for Ohio State when he was healthy, and Philip Daniels. But the question is Josh Padilla ready to push? Is Gabe Van Sickle going to use that Miami first half as a way to get better, or does it hurt the confidence? Does he fall back a little bit because he's a guy that, coming from a small program in Michigan, he wasn't a guy that people had super high expectations for in year two. I don't think most people would have thought that Gabe Van Sickle was the option starting in the college football playoff. And I mean, again, we go back to the snap judgments after that game against Miami. One of the questions I had was, how did they get to this point when all of the progress, all of the momentum was in Josh Padilla's favor in October? And if he was ready to play and to play in the second half of that game and obviously played well, why didn't he start? And what does that mean? Is there more to that as far as what Ohio State believes its best eventual alignment is, or is it about Josh Padilla's best position? Maybe he's still better suited at center and they would like to keep him there. I don't know. But Luke Montgomery's starting. Carson Hinsman's starting. Austin Serveld starting somewhere.
Yeah.
So the question really is, what do Gabe Van Sickle or Josh Padilla have to do to knock the other guy off if Ian Moore is playing tackle? So because if Ian Moore is not playing tackle, then there's just a straight up competition for the right guard. So who and then is that a 2-person race? Probably, but that's what winter and spring is for. You might find someone else, Jake Cook, for example, or even a guy like Carter Lowe, who has as much upside as anybody in the Ohio State offensive line room. So there's like 2 different tranches here of how this question gets answered, and I don't know that it's fair, to your point, to suggest to Josh Padilla or Gabe Van Sickle, well, if Ian Moore's the starter, sorry, you guys are
You're
so
out.
well.
There's no more room.
That's just not the way it's going to go.
And I think there's also a part of this in my mind where if you are paring down the size of the roster, you need multiple people who can play tackle. And I know that this came up a lot. We had this conversation throughout the year. We talked about it at Letterman Row, and people would speculate then, well, it seems like the obvious solution right now is to put Ian Moore out there and move Philip Daniels to guard. Ohio State wasn't going to just midstream remove a starting right tackle and put the backup in there and expect that Philip Daniels, because he had been playing out on the offensive line, that he could take over a new position on the fly. He had been repping at tackle and taken on that job for months. Yeah. And if all this talk, we hear it all the time about primary position, secondary position, cross-training, that's a conversation for spring and a conversation to some extent for training camp. It's not one that I think Ohio State can actually take into the middle of the year. So once Philip Daniels was there, he was staying there. Now, we saw Donovan Jackson adjust on the fly. That's a whole different level of experience than what Philip Daniels had. It was also a whole different scenario for the depth of that offensive line. Some of this thing that we talk about with, all right, well, maybe the guard is currently playing tackle. It's not that easy to make it through an entire season with 2 healthy starting tackles. And Ohio State didn't even do that a year ago. Philip Daniels missed time. Austin Serveld missed the second half of the Cotton Bowl. You may still need to keep all 3 of those guys primarily working at tackle just for the depth and peace of mind of your team, while also you can do that knowing that you feel pretty good. You know that Luke Montgomery's got one of those jobs locked up. You are very confident in Carson Hinsman. Josh Padilla has the ability to swing between center and guard. And Gabe Van Sickle now has a little bit different body of work than he did a year ago. Maybe this will wind up being a conversation that is more about Josh Padilla and Gabe Van Sickle playing at right guard than we have largely talked about through the first 6 weeks. We won't really know that, I think, until the midway point of March.
If that, I mean,
maybe not even then yet.
Probably April, when we get a chance to get in there on April 4th for Student Appreciation Day and watch everything unfold when they run a full scrimmage. But even that, does it matter much? I mean, we don't know.
I think it would if
that's when we started to see Austin Serveld at left tackle, and we were like, hey, that's interesting.
That's my point. If we see Philip Daniels taking reps at guard, because what was the conversation a year ago? They were saying Austin Serveld was rotating between guard and tackle, and what we were seeing was No, Austin Sehraveld is a tackle. And I don't know, by the way, if they will do that with Philip Daniels or Austin Sehraveld, either one. They may spend all of March and April at tackle, and if they do, that's going to tell us that they view that as more important to have 3 guys vying at tackle and also a level of confidence with those guys on the interior. That's certainly an outcome that can happen.
I mean, it feels like I don't know that anything's a likely outcome because we just don't know. I mean, we don't know how much input Arthur Smith is going to have when it comes to the offensive line. Again, we talked about Tyler Bowen on the tackle preview review. Mm-hmm. This is a big year for him. He can't really get this wrong, but you also have what you should consider a fairly confident group of people who have all played meaningful reps. They've all played in big moments. But to one of your points earlier, it's Tegra Shabola dealt with injury multiple times in his career and throughout last year. So, we looked at it and you say, well, maybe he's inconsistent because of this. Maybe he was inconsistent because of injury. Philip Daniels missed a game because of injury. Austin Sehraveld missed a game because of injury, or a game because of injury. Josh Padilla missed a month and a half because of injury. Gabe Van Sickle was, the guy who's thrust into it. And you look at it and you say, well, he did an okay job for what he was asked to do, and the situation being what it was, but you are looking at, and I hate to keep going back to this because it sounds like boring, but with the schedule Ohio State's playing, like you can't get into experimentation mode the way that the schedule is. It's not a normal year. Like last year would have been a perfect year for experimenting. You play Texas and you're like, well, we'll figure it out. We've got a month. And then not the case this year. You get a game, then you get Texas, then you get a game, then you're playing the Big Ten, and then you have Illinois and Iowa and back-to-back weeks. And so then it's like, well, there's not a lot of time to play around and tinker with alignment. So that has to be figured out early. And, it's one of the reasons why it's so, I'm not going to say frustrating, but it is February 11th, and we haven't had an opportunity to sit down and talk to people to say, where do you think this is headed? What is the ideal scenario for you? Because, even if the answers are, we're just going to let it ride and see who steps up, we're going to give everyone a chance. There's no, we know there's 4 offensive line spots locked up. So we think, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so maybe we shouldn't say we know, because I feel like it's wholly unfair to suggest that Philip Daniels wouldn't be the guy, but also it's wholly unfair to Josh Padilla and Gabe Van Sickle and Jake Cook and everyone else to just say you can't win the job, because you have a new offensive line coach, ostensibly, and Arthur Smith coming in, and a new offensive coordinator who's going to have fresh eyes, who's going to see things his way. Maybe he has a completely different vision for what his right guard is supposed to look like. Maybe he wants a smaller, more agile guy like Josh Padilla. I don't know.
Yeah.
So it's a really weird position, and you have 8 guys that you feel like can play. So how do you find that answer and then still get 9 and 10 ready to play? Because where are those guys going to go? It's a very, very interesting group. And it all kind of meshes together, which has been an Ohio State philosophy for the last 6-7 years now on the offensive line. I don't know. They don't really look at tackles and guards the way we traditionally do, except for the rare player like Sam Greer.
I mean,
even Paris Johnson played guard at Ohio State.
Yeah, I was going to say, sometimes it might be in their best interest to actually do that a little bit more, because there was one year where it was, all tackles, and that didn't really work out to anyone's benefit. I mean, there's something about what you said there about, I don't know, can we say that 4 starters are entrenched? No, because everything is earned on a day-to-day basis in the Woody. And I know that sounds like a coaching cliche, but it's true, because of if we're talking about seeing growth and improvement and development from a Josh Padilla, from a Gabe Van Sickle, from a Jake Cook, as you mentioned, those guys they can't be dismissed from the competition. The returning starters have an edge in like physical maturity, actual on-field experience, knowledge of the scheme for the most part, although we don't know how different that might be with Arthur Smith's influence. I completely agree with you. Frustrating may not be the right word for it, but we're about at that time of year where you should have an introductory press conference for your offensive coordinator. Ryan Day has a lot of things that he can unpack about what happened in January. We do need that. Like, that needs to happen. not just for our sake, but I think for, Ohio State fans that are anxious to turn the page into 2026 after the way that year ended. But to go back to what you were saying, like, you do have 4 proven starters. That doesn't guarantee that they get to keep it.
Right.
So, it's a matter of semantics, but that's certainly the place that you would rather be at than the alternative. One might need to move positions. One might face a new, Philip Daniels wasn't locked into a starting job in March of last year. He went out and earned it in a scenario that
at a position no one expected
would
him to
have
play.
been tough to project. So, like, that part is all real. And the way that Josh Padilla, works in the weight room, the way people talk about his tenacity and the wrestling background and leverage and scrappiness, there's no part of me that's like, well, Josh Padilla is just he's gonna coast. He's happy to be here. If Philip Daniels takes his job or whatever, no, he's gonna absolutely battle for it, and that's gonna rise the level of productivity and ability. If iron sharpens iron, to use another coaching cliche, that's going to force everyone to get better, and it's going to force Arthur Smith and Tyler Bowen and Ryan Day to make harder choices, but luxury choices.
Yeah.
What's the actual best 5? We know what, or we think we know, and we assume that the left guard and center spot's not going to look any different, but there are other configurations that you could still use with those guys. There are plenty of people, Birm, that have said, well, Carson's reps when he was at guard were really good. I'm telling you now, he's not going to move from center, but it's at least another thing that you could theoretically consider.
Again, that's why you recruit the way they've recruited. You recruit offensive linemen. You're not. There are very rare exceptions, and I bring up Paris Johnson for a reason. Like, even when you first saw Paris Johnson, what was the first thing I told you about him as a prospect? Like, what did I say?
He said that he had skinny ankles.
And then I said what?
Well,
I said he's a top 5 pick in the NFL draft before he entered Ohio State.
Yeah, you did.
Okay? I was wrong. He was a number 6 pick.
Yeah, you did miss.
In the draft.
But you were close.
Guys like him are exceedingly rare, and even he played guard for a full season at Ohio State. He played guard in the national championship game as a true freshman against Alabama, and then played guard the entire next season. So it's not like even the cookie cutter, this guy's a tackle, he's 100% a tackle. That doesn't mean jack anymore. Mm-hmm. Like, Austin Serveld was never a tackle. But then you get put into this situation where it's like, well, this is actually what we need. And so what you need becomes more important than what you'd like. And I don't know that Ohio State entering a season like this one, entering a season that is as pivotal as this one, for crazy as it sounds, for Ryan Day's legacy, even though he's, a year and 4 weeks or a year and 2 weeks after winning a national championship.
Yeah.
You go out this season and you finish 8-4 because your offensive line is a jumbled mess and the schedule's super hard. Ryan Day's entire legacy becomes a different conversation. So it's like, what do you need? What you need, if you're Ohio State, is for Austin Serveld and Philip Daniels and Luke Montgomery and Carson Hinsman to come out and say, nobody's taking our jobs, and be the vocal, nasty slobs like Ohio State has counted on for the last decade plus. And then you need someone else to close the door on the further discussion, whether it's Ian Moore at left tackle, whether it's Josh Padilla at right guard, whether it's Gabe Van Sickle at right guard, whether it's whatever.
Yeah.
Someone else has to come in, and then you can let the Jake Cooks and the Carter Lowe's and everyone else that's on the offensive line. And it's a mess. It's a group that's been jumbled up. I mean, Javon McFadden, who was taking reps at tackle last year, transferred out. Justin Terry, taking reps at tackle last year, transferred out. Both of those guys after 1 year. And so, like, you're talking about depth and the changing roster. Like, you need 8 to 10 guys who can play every position pretty much. Mm-hmm. And Ohio State's close to that. But you still look at it and you think, what's the best case scenario for the team, and how do you maintain that mode?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think Awaken 180 was the best case scenario for you.
Yeah, I mean, speaking of maintenance mode, that was an excellent segue. I'm in maintenance mode. I'm still melting away. I mean, this shirt, when I got this shirt,
a new size.
My friends, I would just want to be as clear as I can. when I got this shirt, it was May of 2025, right? That was last year?
Correct, yes.
And this thing was so tight on me, I could rub the inside of my belly button. And I would. I'd just sit there and I'd rub my belly button. And
It's
now,
a soft shirt.
And now I can't even see any part of me wearing the shirt. I look like a skeleton. And I feel great, though. And Awaken180weightloss.com has helped me get there. They've got great coaching. They've got a great app that helps you monitor and maintain your intake throughout the day to tell you when you need to do more or do less. It's been awesome. Mandy, my coach, is great. I've really enjoyed the experience. I feel great. I do look great. And Awaken180weightloss.com has helped. You should do it.
You and Connor, for real, are so humble.
Well, someone has to do it.
Bar none. You are the most humblest.
When you look at this group, this offensive line group,
yeah,
and we're kind of jumping around here a little bit. What is the way Arthur Smith elevates it? Because again, I don't want to put bad juju on Tyler Bowen, but again, it had been 7 years since he coached the offensive line. They brought in Marcus Johnson and Charles Dickey for a reason to help supplement that coaching opportunity. But what does Arthur Smith do to change it?
Well, you said if this season goes off the rails because the offensive line looks like a jumbled mess or plays like a jumbled mess or is a jumbled mess, I mean, that can't happen. And I think that Arthur Smith's involvement with that alongside Tyler Bowen is going to be critical. And, you know, you asked a fair question, a good question about what was it that allowed or tipped the scales for Tyler Bowen to play Gabe Van Sickle in the first half against Miami. And we all saw those two drives against Indiana, and they were the best that Ohio State had in that game. And it was like, yeah, I can understand using that as the evidence you need to reach that decision. But it was also only two drives. And maybe,
two drives that did not result in points.
And maybe that was an overreaction in our own evaluation outside the program. Maybe it was the same thing inside the program. I don't know. It's another thing that we haven't really had a chance to dive into with Ohio State since the season actually ended. But, you know, that's not to pick on Gabe Van Sickle, and in some ways not even a true criticism of the staff. Like, I think they had good justification for doing it, and they don't have unlimited options. But what does Arthur Smith have to do? They have to pick the 5 players that, and you said this, that suit what Arthur Smith wants that run game to look like. Now, how does that translate over to pass protection and all the other things? I don't think that's what he's being brought in to do. Some of that is going to be reliant on overall scheme, Julian Sands' processing ability, how he can help correct some things with whether that's slides, checks, any of the other things that are on a quarterback's plate. I'm not so much worried about that, which sounds maybe ridiculous to you, America, based on what happened in those last 2 games. But it is finding something cohesive and coherent with a plan for those 5 offensive linemen and how that applies to a enhanced running game. That's what is on Arthur Smith's plate. And I think his NFL experience will be key for Tyler Bowen, because Tyler Bowen is not going to be making those decisions in a silo. Like, that's not going to happen.
I wonder, because the first half of the Indiana game was so bad, because the first half of the Miami game was so bad, and I think it's a fair way to look at it that maybe the reaction to Gabe Van Sickle's 2 series against the Hoosiers was probably hyperbolized a touch.
Yeah.
But again, Ohio State didn't score on those drives. Yeah, you had 2 drives that chalked up 15-plus minutes of game time and 170 yards. You didn't score. Yeah. So you look at it in a vacuum and say, well, that was better. But, you know, for an inexperienced offensive line coach to have to be put in those positions, I think was really a real learning experience for Tyler Bowen, both of those games. Because it's not like you're heading into halftime against Miami in the college football playoff and you realize that, our best offensive lineman can't play.
Yeah.
And so now what? Like, you're already missing your right guard who started 2 straight seasons for you, and you have to play a guy who's played 2 series against Indiana, and then your team captain, your heart and soul of your offense, can't play, and then you have to put in Ian Moore, who played one game against Purdue. And again, this is why I think it'd be really nice to have a day where we can sit down with the coaches again in very near future, whomever is making those decisions down the street at Ohio State. But how did you get there? How did you get to that point? And do you feel like it was myopic in some way? Like, well, we only saw this, and so we just decided let's not have an open competition. Because, again, it's not just offensive line that had those problems. It was the kicker situation. We're told we had a competition. Now, did you? I don't know. Because the kicker situation kind of hurt as well.
Well, they're paid a lot of money to make those decisions, and they shouldn't be, in the best case scenario, prone to recency bias with their decision making. But guess what? We all are. And that is the last thing that they saw. And they knew that Indiana was really good, and Gabe Van Sickle accepted that opportunity and didn't back down. And I bet that he had fine practices after that, or they would have made a different change. And the other part of that is we don't know where on the 0 to 100 scale Josh Padilla truly was through all of that. If he was limited at any stretch in December or coming out of, we thought by Michigan that he was going to be able to potentially get back in the lineup. He was off the availability report. That still doesn't mean that he was getting every single rep. And part of that's the gray area with that decision-making process. He certainly looked good enough to do it in the second half against Miami. And it's always going to be a what-if game looking back. And should they have done something different? I mean, there were a lot of things that they needed to do different in that game to win. So we'll never probably get to a straight answer on that, but I am not just talking to the coaching staff, but like Josh Padilla, Gabe Van Sickle, they could have easily left after last season as well. What all did they learn? What did they go through? What was the health setback, the nature of that? How close to 100% by the Cotton Bowl was Josh Padilla? There are a lot of these things that I think will help provide new context on the review part of this conversation at guard and center. But the preview part is they have to move on from that no matter what and be better by the middle of March, and then even better by the end of April, and certainly by the start of August. And I think between those guys that we've belabored the point on all of this week, Ian Moore, Gabe Van Sickle, and Josh Padilla, I won't be surprised if you get one starter out of that, and it's not out of the realm of possibility that you get two.
Yeah, and at the risk of going down the rabbit hole of why we should talk to people at Ohio State more often in the offseason, Luke Montgomery could have gone somewhere else. Yeah. Carson Hinzman could have gone somewhere else. Austin Sareveld could have gone somewhere else. If you want to know what makes the Ohio State program still special, if you want to be able to promote the things that are keeping kids like that who all had NFL opportunities or more money elsewhere in the transfer portal opportunities, let's give them a microphone and say, hey.
It doesn't even have to be getting to know the new players. The ones that could have gone to the NFL or commanded 7-figure paydays from other schools. Not saying that
not saying Ohio State didn't give them.
Not saying that they did or didn't. I don't know. I haven't seen the contracts, but like the returning players and the captains for this team are also worth catching up with right now.
It's just a matter of the 2025 season is over, and we're still having to discuss ad nauseum the inefficiencies of the offensive line against Miami and Indiana. And the better opportunity would be, let's talk about what's moving forward and how this group of returning guys is fortified and making sure that these things don't happen again. So let's just, let's get that done. We should really have Carson Hinzman on this show.
I couldn't agree more.
In the near future.
Yeah.
Because I really, and in America, if you're listening, we've had some real luck with people listening to the show all over the world. People who know people. We were graciously offered some movie passes and stuff like that. And we're like, this is awesome. If anybody works for Dr. Pepper out there, if you or your family works at Dr. Pepper and you want to find a really fun-loving guy to represent your brand, it's Carson Hinzman.
That's the guy. Well,
and Luke Montgomery.
Don't take it away from Luke either.
I mean, let's get him on here. We have room here for Austin and Luke to join us in the new studio.
Let's throw him right in.
And I would really like that.
Also, shout out to our guy Luke at AMC.
Yeah, and I would really love to know what flavor of Dr. Pepper those guys lean toward. Because I think they're just classic, fully leaded Dr. P. And I'm like, man, that's...
Well, they burn a lot more calories
tumultuous
than we do.
Yeah. No Z's for them.
Yeah, Z's only. So that's a stock watch review preview.
This is just weird because there's so many positions this offseason that you're like, I don't know.
I get it. That's why we're trying to break them down. That's why we're talking it out.
Well,
Berm.
when you lose 50 players a year now, like this is is this the new norm? Like if 50 players every year, like the ability to know what you have in college football, it is way different than it's ever been before.
Well, but I also think, and we did get several emails to the Austin and Birm Show at gmail.com. Get those questions in, by the way, for the Friday mailbag, the Austin and Birm Show at gmail.com. People saying it's a lot to keep up with, and we appreciate it with the review previews and resetting where the roster's at and letting us know who's back, who's coming, who's going, who Ohio State has landed. So I know that like it may feel like we're just saying I don't know a lot, but we're also trying our best to keep up with it because that's our job to do.
Yeah.
And I can't even imagine, trying to keep up with it just purely as a fan because it is chaos. But spring ball is a month away. We're almost there. We only have one more offensive position to go on the review previews, by the way.
Yeah, we're flying through it.
Yeah, well, best we can. Thanks for joining us, as always. Appreciate the folks down here at 97.1 The Fan and 10 TV for allowing us to use this studio again. Hopefully the sound worked a little bit better than the last time on Talkin' Tuesday, but that's on me. We'll get it corrected, and hopefully we did already. But he's Birm. I'm Austin. This has been the Interior Offensive Line Review Preview on the Beat, presented by the Waterworks. We'll catch you again on Thursday.